Hey guys, Elle here. Today I have a review of one of my all-time favorite tarot decks, like for sure top 10 favorite tarot decks of all time, and it is the Ansata Tarot by Paul Struck. This is a majors only deck. It only has 22 cards. It's not a full deck. I do plan on doing another video on how I use my majors only decks and some spreads that I use them in and things like that, because they're really useful. I love majors only decks. I don't have a ton, but of course you can read with just the major arcana, but I do have some spreads that sort of incorporate a couple of decks, one being a majors only deck, and then I pull the rest of the cards from like a full 78 card deck, and I think that'll be fun. Anyway, this deck came out in 1985 originally, and it sort of goes along with a book, a German book, Astrology and Tarot by Bernd Mertz, or B.A. Mertz, M-E-R-T-Z. I believe that at some point it was released as like a deck and book set, and this deck itself has been in and out of print over the last, over 20 years, and that's been published by AGM or AG Mueller. I believe at the time that I'm making this video it is sort of out of print at the moment, but it's really because it's been in and out of print over the years so many times, it's not super hard to find. It's not a deck I would spend hundreds of dollars on. I see people selling them or attempting to sell them for that much. I think I spent maybe $30 on it when I got it. It's one of those decks you got to kind of keep your eyes peeled for. I did jump on eBay and Etsy and those kind of sites before I made this video today, and there are several decks available out there for reasonable prices. Be careful on Amazon. They're rather ridiculously priced at the moment. So this deck is available in two different languages. It's available in German and it's available in English. This box that I have right here is actually the German version of the deck. I couldn't find my box for my English version. I'm so sorry. But yeah, everything is in German and the titles on the cards are in German. This is actually the unopened set that we will be doing a giveaway for within the next few weeks, probably. Maybe when we hit 1,000 subscribers, because we're getting ridiculously close. So cool. But this is the actual copy that I'll be giving away. I keep my cards in here, and I will show you guys what they look like in English. You know, this deck is cool for a number of reasons. First of all, the artwork is. It's another one that it's mind-blowingly good. The artwork and the symbolism, and it goes to an esoteric, mythological, astrological sort of a place. But another reason why it's such a fascinating deck is because of the correspondences with this deck. Astrological correspondences. Basically what they've done is, like I said, it's based on the work in another book, that Astrology and Tarot book, and what he does in that book is he associates every single tarot card with a planetary or an astrological sign. So that's nothing new for us tarot people, right? There's always been associations. There's different schools of thought on what is associated with what. But this one's really unique and really different. And even though in the end I don't necessarily agree with every single one, just like I don't agree with all the Golden Dawn correspondences and all that, it's still just a fascinating thing to look into. Here's a little white book, and you'll see he gives you all the symbols for all the planetary and the zodiacal signs, and then all their associations are in here, and that's kind of really what he's talking about when he goes over each card. Unfortunately, I can't read the book where this deck sort of comes from because it's in German, and I don't think it's ever been translated into English. I think it'd be a fascinating read. But this little white book gives you enough information on sort of why this correspondency, why each card corresponds to what it corresponds to in their way of thinking. Some of them are familiar. And are the same as like Golden Dawn correspondences or other correspondences that you find out there, and some are like totally different and might seem a little sort of odd at first, but I think that correspondences are a fantastic way to explore and deepen your understanding of the tarot, even if in the end you don't necessarily end up agreeing with it. Sorry, what's at the back here is, after it goes over all the cards, there's like a horoscope spread, which is really cool because this deck is, like I said, it relies heavily on the astrological correspondences. So that's really a really fascinating spread, especially if you're into astrology and horoscopes and stuff. And then there's a few other spreads back here that are really interesting too. But that's it. It's a decent little white book, but just, you know, still a little white book. But this is how your deck comes. It's sort of your standard tuck box, and you have your little white book in there and your cards wrapped together. And like I said, that's all in German. Okay, let's break into this sucker. This is how I keep my Ansata Tarot. I actually keep it in a tin that I decorated with a pretty picture. And this is what the backs of the cards look like. There you go. I think it's a really beautiful backing, actually. I really like it. It's not really reversible. You can tell there's, you know, dark and light and dark, and, you know, you can tell which way is upright. You know, I know that the lighter squares on top and stuff, but it's not one of those backings that jumps out at you when it is reversed. So this works for me. Let's do a little size comparison. The cardstock is fantastic on these guys. I know I forget to talk about the cardstock sometimes, guys, sorry. Just know that if it was like really shitty cardstock, like really thin or something that jumped out at me, I would definitely tell you about it. They're a little bit thinner than, I guess, your Centennial Rider-Waite-Smith cardstock, but it's good, sturdy cardstock. They are a lot bigger, so you can tell. They're just a bit longer, the Ansata Tarot, and like a good inch, I guess you could say, wider. But they're not huge. They're not like Marielle size or Oracle size cards. They're still very, very shuffleable and handleable. And there is your Fool, as you've seen from the front of the box. That's the Fool card. So here's the associations down here. You'll have the planetary symbol or the zodiac symbol down here, and they've associated the Fool with Pluto. It's really, really very interesting associations, like I said. And then at the bottom of the card, you'll have the name, and then the number is in the other corner, and that's the only sort of other symbols outside of the image of the card. But let me zoom in on this a little bit. I like that these cards are a little bit bigger in size because it does let you really enjoy the artwork, because the artwork is super detailed and there's lots and lots of symbolism everywhere. I thought this was a sword when I looked at it really quickly. It's actually one of those like Egyptian, what are they called? Like obelisks or something like that. Up there. Isn't that beautiful? It's like this Fool is sort of half in rags and half in riches. So as you can tell, this theme sort of carries out throughout the entire deck. I mean, this European look and this Egyptian look that you get on the Magician especially. I feel like those are the two big sort of themes. It's very based on mythology and, like I said, astrology. And he's even put his own twist into these cards. There's lots of little critters and fairies and sprites and bugs and all sorts of little life forms everywhere, all over the cards. It's like everything is alive and moving. It creates a really cool effect. But yeah, on your Magician card here, you still have your infinity down here in the shape of a snake. You still have all the symbols of the elements of the tarot. And because they've associated the Magician with the sun, how interesting is that? You get this beautiful Horus back here. Isn't that amazing? And here is your High Priestess. I'll zoom in on it a little bit, but check that out. And this one has a bit of a more classic association you might recognize. The High Priestess here is associated with the moon. I'm gonna zoom in here. Look at her. She's got a black and a white sphinx, a male and a female sphinx right next to her. She's got a veil. She's got this beautiful moon crown with like a triple goddess up there. She's got one set of legs and 3 torsos. She's like a trinity. Isn't that amazing? So, I mean, a lot of people might or do consider this a really dark, spooky, creepy kind of a deck. And I don't really feel that way with this deck. I mean, it's certainly not a happy-go-lucky. The faces, they're not smiling, and they're not giddy, and they're not skipping around, and the colors aren't maybe bright and cheerful, but it's not a gloomy deck, at least in my opinion. I think the same thing gets said about like the Mary L tarot too, that it's like this dark, creepy kind of imagery, and I feel like maybe it goes there for some people because of all the mythological references and a lot of the symbolism. I think when you look at mythology, if you were to draw some of the pictures that come right out of myths, like mythology is some fucked up shit. There's all sorts of crazy, creepy stuff going on. The animals morphing into people and incest and rape, and like it's all metaphor though. So obviously, but I think that maybe that's part of why people think it's kind of creepy. I honestly think like the Deviant Moon Tarot is more darker and a little creepier than like this one is, or the Mary L is, for me anyway. This deck just, it feels good. I love the feel of this deck. Here's your Empress, and this is associated with Virgo. You still get like you're ruled by Mercury. You still get all the classic tarot symbolism, really, with these cards. I love this Empress. Isn't she gorgeous? Look at her. And her crown of stars and everything. Even though there is a lot of Egyptian and mythological references, I don't think that you necessarily need to be fully versed in all that to be able to appreciate this tarot deck. It's still a tarot deck. Here's your Emperor, associated with Jupiter. So, I mean, even though I don't necessarily follow these correspondences, just like I don't follow, like I said, the Golden Dawn correspondences, I can still read with this deck. I can still read with a Thoth deck. I think that, and this is such a personal choice, I guess, really, but when it comes down to it, that they're still just tarot cards, whatever, they've chosen, however they've chosen to illustrate it or associate things. When it comes down to it, it's still just a tarot deck, and as long as you don't get too caught up in the associations and stuff, there's still just a range of meaning associated with each card. I thought that it would be really hard, especially with the Thoth deck, like in the minors, there's the illustrations, but the astrological correspondences for the decans and stuff they jump out at you, like they're right there. Yeah, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. It doesn't stop me from being able to read with those decks. I'm sure it influences my readings. but I'm not, I don't know, a so-called intuitive reader. Don't get me wrong, I use my intuition when I'm tarot reading, of course. But I'm not solely looking at the picture and letting that tell me about the card. That's just not how I read. I have my own sort of internal range of meaning for each card. And yes, the image pulls me places and draws me to things, but it's not the entirety of how I get my information, I guess you could say. This is one of my favorite cards. I think this is one that sort of creeps people out a little bit. See all those little critters back there? It's sort of, I guess they're a little creepy, but they remind me of like Brian Froud. And just, you know, the energies of everything. They're like little sprites, little elves, little dwarves. And they're so cool looking. I love them. They've associated this card with Saturn, because I mean, they went there with Thoth, obviously, you know, depicted on the card, and his counterpart in Greek mythology is Saturn. So Saturn. It's an interesting correspondence. One of the things I love about a lot of the people that you see in the deck is like their bodies are part stone almost. It's like they're becoming stone, like their physical, their material bodies. It really just draws your attention to the fact that it's cracking, it's passing away, it's of the earth. It's not what's eternal, like your spirit. Yeah, this is probably my favorite card in the entire deck. It's so beautiful. I love his big ankh. He's even got a veil going, like the High Priestess. You know, I think that his minions back here are, you know, they're metaphor. They're not nightmarish, as I've heard them described by people. But that's up to you. You know, art is so subjective, isn't it? But I really do just love how surreal this deck is, and it's an interesting, fascinating artwork to me. I think it's so beautiful. Here you have kind of a classic lover's card ruled by Mercury here. Isn't that cool? And your Chariot associated with Sagittarius. I think that's an interesting correlation or correspondence to make. You know, one of the things that a centaur really is getting at is, you know, topping your animal nature, being in control of it. So you get that from the image of the Chariot too, being driving the two horses, usually the dark and the light, the two sides of yourself. It's the same thing in Norse myth, where you have Odin riding on Sleipnir. It's a not a four-legged horse, it's an eight-legged horse, Sleipnir. So it's like the two horses have been combined there. Instead of the man and the horse being combined, you have the two sides combined, and it's being ridden by Odin, by consciousness. There's your human part on top of it. Centaurs have always been an interesting metaphor, I think, for me. And number 8 here is Justice. Strength is 11 in this deck, and that's another sort of familiar correspondency, right, with Libra and Justice. She's weighing a feather and a heart, just like Maat. I love the background. Look at that. You see that yin-yang back there? It's the sun and the moon, the light and the dark. Her sword here, her scales is a sword piercing a book. And here's a little bit more of that, it's like turning into stone thing on her torso there. These cards are just, they're pure fucking magic. They really are. They go there. Here's some more of those like creepy sort of critters all around. It's like everything is alive. He's in the earth. He's going into a cave. He's got his Cerberus down here. I even like how the tail turns into a three-headed snake. So fascinating. He's got his lamp. And look at all those guys. Everything is alive in this deck. I can see why people think it's a little spooky, but I don't know. It doesn't feel spooky. And the Hermit here is associated with Neptune. Here's your Wheel of Fortune with Capricorn. You still have your classic, very classic actually, the three beings around the wheel there. I love the snakes at the bottom. How fucking cool is that? The wheel itself is just beautiful. It's almost like they're half alive and half statues too, the beings on the wheel. Hermanubis and so on and so forth. Here's your Strength card associated with Leo, another familiar correspondency perhaps. This one looks very much like the Thoth card, or the Rosetta especially. It reminds me of that card a lot. Very much like the Lust card. And there are obviously, there's borders on this deck, but they don't bother me at all. I would never trim this deck. And maybe part of it's because the cards are a little bit bigger. I have no problem seeing all the detail on these guys. Here is your Hanged Man. And he's associated with Uranus. Let me zoom in here again. Look at him playing a flute. The balance and the symbolism is just, oh my god, you guys. Isn't that beautiful? Here's your Death card, number 13, associated with Scorpio. Another familiar pairing, perhaps. This may be another one of my favorite cards. I love how he's got like a scorpion tail. How neat is that? You can see like body parts down there. Alright, it's a little dark, but you have body parts in all your Death cards, you know? Look at him, he's blooming life out of himself too. He's growing. There's so much to pull from these cards. Oh, one of my favorites. Here's Temperance. And Temperance is associated with Aquarius. I love the double-headed Temperance angel here. Isn't that beautiful? Again, your sun and your moon. Even the jugs are just incredible. These jugs, not these jugs. Those are nice jugs though too. And they have like a Pegasus flying back there. See all the little animals hiding back here? That's beautiful. Just beautiful artwork. And number 15, your Devil, associated with Mars. This one's got a lot going on. I'm going to zoom in here. There is a little, they're all signed by the artist, but it doesn't jump out at you like crazy. It doesn't obscure any of the imagery. Isn't that great? Such a cool devil. And here's your Tower card associated with Aries. I love the big Eye of Horus up by the sun there. The lightning coming like right out of it. I just feel like even if you have your own set correspondences, like it's not something that's going to stop you from working with most decks. Certainly not this deck. I really don't mind the correspondences here. I think they're just interesting. Here's the Star, and the Star is associated with Venus. It's a great correspondency for this card, you know? Even though you might often find it associated with like the Empress or something, the star that we're talking about in this card is Venus, the morning star, the evening star. But it certainly doesn't change what the card itself means. It doesn't take hope away from it, even if you didn't associate it with Venus, or that the star Venus in general, you know. What's happening here? It's really cool. It looks like a narwhal whale or something is coming up from the water. Check that out. All these little flowers blooming everywhere. And you get all your stars up there. Beautiful. The moon card, associated with Cancer, of course. Such a creepy looking lobster, I love him. And you get your eclipse. And here's your sun card. And the sun is associated with Gemini. What is it? In the Golden Dawn, Gemini is the lovers, I think, right? But it's an interesting way to look at things, isn't it? You know, you always have not always, but for the most part, you usually have the two figures on the sun card, and I love that they have the entire zodiac on here, but, you know, it's an interesting correlation to Gemini, I think. Oh, this Judgment card is just crazy. Check this out. Look down there. Judgment is Pisces here too. And look at all the fish down there in the water. They're like so cool looking. There's even like an eel thing over there. Like rising from a shipwreck or something. And the giant trumpet making the waves go crazy with its vibrations. Isn't that amazing? And finally, your world card. And they've actually associated the world with Taurus. How interesting is that? Not a conclusion I would have come to on my own, but it's interesting to read about why they did that. If anybody out there has read the book where this deck sort of got its start from, that Astrology and Tarot by Bernd Mertz, please share. There's limited information in the little white book. It doesn't go into explicit detail about why the correspondences are the way they are. It's just a little bit to wet your whistle. So if anyone has read that, if you could, I don't know, share a little bit with us, I think that'd be amazing. Isn't that beautiful? It's got the scorpion by her feet. Lots of snakes wrapping all over everything, and I just adore that symbolism. And then you have 4 signs around her, and she stands on the world. And that brings us back to our beautiful Fool card. So that is the Ansata Tarot. I'm going to do a little shuffle here. It's always fun to try and shuffle with 22 cards, but they shuffle very, very easily. They fit in my hand wonderfully. They're certainly not giant-sized cards, even though they are a little bit bigger than your standard size. So that is the Ansata Tarot by Paul Struck, a majors-only deck, and we will be doing the giveaway for the German version of this deck in the next few weeks. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.